Welcome to the Scratch Golfer's Mindset Podcast, the show committed to helping you dismantle the destructive mindset programs keeping you stuck in the proverbial bunker of poor performance so you can get out of your own way and play to your potential. My name is Paul Salter. I'm a high-performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach with 16 years of experience helping thousands of individuals like you get unstuck. This podcast features a collection of solo episodes, conversations with Scratch and Plus handicap golfers, and master classes with top experts in the performance psychology space. The one goal? To help you make playing to your potential a habit. Buckle up. The energy, the synergy is about to be taken to the next level. I had the privilege of sitting down with Kathy Hart Wood, who's a mental golf coach, a life coach, but someone with such a unique background, a breadth of experience as a tour player, a top 50 teacher, and someone who has been involved in the game of golf her entire life. And her niche, her specialty and expertise is helping people get out of their own way and play to their potential. Beautiful synergy behind what it is I strive to do in every podcast, newsletter, and with every client I coach. You're going to love this episode. I will forewarn you, get your notebook out. Get some method of note-taking ready. You're going to learn a tremendous amount. And without further ado, let's dive in. Please help me welcome Kathy to the show. Hey, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. How are you today?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show. I'm excited.
Absolutely. To be frank, I'm fascinated by your story. I wish I could have lived part of your story because you have such a depth of playing experience and then so much professional experience where you took it to the next level to really put on the coaching hat as well, to give back from all that you've learned. Help our listeners understand a little bit about your story, playing-wise, coaching-wise, from your playing days up until today.
So I come from a golf family. My dad was a golf pro. My brother played on the tour his whole life. I ended up marrying a golf pro. So I really just grew up hanging out at the golf clubs. You know, I went to work with my dad. And so I started competing at a very young age. I started competing nationally at a very young age. That's now all the kids compete nationally. But at my age, there weren't too many women or girls, I should say, from Buffalo, New York, competing nationally. So I started pretty early. And then I went on to play college golf at Furman University, and then I went and played in tours all over the world. I played South Africa, Australia, Korea, United States, Europe. So I've been all over the world competing. And one of the things that I always struggled with was I had way more talent than I was taking out to the golf course. And I went to a lot of sports psychologists. I was trying to figure out, I had access to some of the smartest and brightest people. Golf industry ends up being very small. To help me out. And I watched my dad, who was an excellent golfer, thrive and playing at even though he was a club pro, he competed in won tons of tournaments and in New York State, and then, played in a lot of opens and PGAs and things like that. And then my brother went on to play on the tour. He got there right out of college. So I always felt like there was something wrong with me. I was struggling. Why did I have all this talent? And I really couldn't take it out to the golf course. And I ended up getting married, and my husband was teaching with the Golf Digest schools at that time. And so I started teaching. And so I started teaching for the Nicholas Flick golf schools for many years. And I stayed teaching. I'm a top 50 teacher. I just, for several years over, and have other rankings and things that have come my way. And so I spent a lot of time, helping people with their swing and their grip and all the things that a teacher does, and learning that part of it, and teaching with some of the best instructors in the country. And I I always was struggling to really solve for myself. I'm a little nerdy. So I'm reading books and trying to learn and trying to figure myself out. And I felt like a brick fell on my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I finally figured it out many years later. I remember exactly where I was. I had done some coaching, had some coaching for myself, and realized some tools and things that I didn't I never used, I never heard of. A sports psychologist that I went to, very famous names, everybody would know, lots of books written, that really worked on my pre-shot routine. But nobody was helping me with my beliefs about myself, about the disappointment, the shame that I was suffering, about my perfectionism, about the people pleasing that I was struggling with on the golf course. No one was helping me get past this positive thought that I thought I had, that I was a great putter. My big story that I talk about is I struggled with my putting. I could hit 15 greens and shoot 75 with the best of them, day in and day out, right? And it was really a struggle for me. I had lots of help with my putting, and there was nothing wrong with my stroke. There was something wrong with my mindset, my brain, my thoughts. My belief was that I was always going to struggle with my putting. So I learned some tools on how to shift thoughts by working on my personal life through some coaching. And I used a tool in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if this would work for golf. And I had actually quit golf. I had 3 girls. I was like, I'm just going to teach and raise my kids and not compete anymore. I was like, I'm too unhappy and miserable playing the game. I just didn't like the way that I felt. I didn't like the way golf made me feel. I didn't like my experience while I was out there playing golf, because I was just shaming myself so bad that I was such a good golfer, but I wasn't scoring very well. So anyway, I set out on a mission to test it relative to golf. I don't know why it was like, it's just anything. It's just like everything. And in 10 days, I did a 180 in my putting by just shifting a couple beliefs that I didn't really know I could change. And I had people come up to me like, what did you do with your putting? I didn't do anything other than I changed and shifted one thought and one belief that I had for decades. It's from junior golf, college golf, all through my professional career. And I was like, I got to stop fixing people's grips, because it doesn't matter how pretty their swing is or how beautiful their TrackMan numbers are. But if they can't think and they can't get past some of their beliefs and their struggles, it doesn't matter. It's a moot point. So I got a top 50 award, and the next day I quit teaching, and I just shifted careers and started helping people take their talent that they have out onto the golf course and enjoy their experience more. And I love it. It is the most satisfying thing I've ever done. It's way more satisfying than fixing someone's swing plane. I can tell you that.
For those of you listening, Kathy is lighting up telling the story. Like, I love it. I feel the energy through the screen. It's fascinating. And you make it sound, as any good coach does, simple. It is just a few things internally, what we believe about ourselves, how we think, how we talk to ourselves. Yet you, me, everybody listening knows that simple is not the same as easy. Yeah. So with that said, walk us through a little bit more this process. I mean, as I was doing my research, learning more about you, like one thought away. That's the theme of a lot you do. I get it. It makes sense, but help us understand what the process looks like of beginning to change our thoughts and our beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah, well, your first step is awareness. If you're coachable, sometimes people aren't coachable. They don't want to look at some of the things that they're struggling with. So you have to be coachable. And then you have to go and you have to be really self-aware and curious. And that turns into really looking at the things where you're not getting results. I tell people you might be aware of some of the actions that you're taking and you're doing things over and over again. It could be results that you're creating over and over again. It could be how you're feeling, right? So if you're feeling a certain way consistently, that's something worth being self-aware about. So I teach a little formula. It's like my method. It's called STEER, and basically it's cognitive behavior therapy in a nutshell. But I put little bookends on it, and we can use it for anything that we have in our life that can plug into it. So once you realize whether it's a result, an action, an emotion, or a thought, or a situation, then you can plug it in and kind of figure out where you're getting stuck. And so for me, because putting was always the part that I was challenged with, what we can do is, and I know you know this, and just for listeners who don't know that, is if you have a thought, which is optional, and you think it over and over and over again, it becomes a belief. And once it becomes a belief, it becomes a little non-negotiable in your head, meaning you feel like you could prove it to people. You're like, oh no, it's true. Right? You're like, this is for sure. I suck. Everybody would agree I suck. Or for me, it was, I'm always going to struggle with my putting. And people will go, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. No, I have so much evidence that I've always struggled with my putting. So once it's a belief, we just we get stuck there and we think it's a fact that we could prove in a court of law. And then you're stuck. This is where people get stuck. And so if you're willing to look at some of the things that you believe and question, are they really true? Like, could I think something different? Would 7 billion people on the planet actually agree with me? Then if the answer is no, then you can shift it. And so I went about taking that thought. I really had two thoughts. Okay. I had one that stuck out to me. And the way that I found the thoughts really was that I dumped my brain out on a piece of paper. So that's one of the things that you can do. I encourage journaling. I was never a journaler. I never had a diary growing up because I was always so worried that, someone would open it up and see my deepest, darkest thoughts. If this is a concern of yours, just dump it on a piece of paper and then throw the paper out. Like that says you can do it on your iPad and then erase the screen, right? So, because I run into a lot of people who have pushback on this, but what you're doing is you want to go and see what's in there that you're really not aware of that is affecting the way that you show up in your life and on the golf course. And so my two thoughts were, I'm always going to struggle with my putting, and putting's the worst part of my game. Now, putting being the worst part of my game was actually true. So we get stuck repeating thoughts that sometimes are true, but are not useful to us. So that was not useful for me to tell myself that putting was the worst part of my game because something of my stats is going to be on the lowest, right? So it wasn't a useful thing to say because it felt crappy. So I just kind of decided not to talk about that one or repeat that one anymore. But I was going to work on the thought that I'm always going to struggle with my putting. And so I shifted it. I started shifting it to, and this is the part of what I coach people on, is doing ladder thoughts, where I had said 4 million times, I'm a great putter to myself. And one of the things that I learned is positive affirmations. So I thought I was doing all the right things, but positive affirmations aren't always effective because my brain spit it out in disbelief. My brain didn't buy. We can't BS our brain, so my brain didn't buy into it. I had no pulse on that thought. It was too unbelievable to me, so it was wasted air. I wasted so much time on that thought. So I shifted my thought and I started doing ladder thoughts to get me up and to that point. So I had to start at the next best thought. So my next best thought was, it's possible I could putt well today. And I love saying it's possible if you have something that you have a lot of doubt in, or something that anybody listening has some beliefs that they want to shift, because possible gives you hope. And hope is a little bit of a crack, a light. So when I thought I'm always going to struggle with my putting, that made me feel like despair and hopelessness. Like, why bother? I'm going to tell you, I played golf for a living, and sometimes I didn't even line up putts. I'm like, who cares? I'm like, I'm lucky if I can just get it up there. But that action that I was taking was coming from despair and hopelessness, right? So I shifted it to, it's possible that I could putt well. And then I had a little bit of hope. And so I stuck with it like a dog on a bone. I know the process that your brain is going to want to give you, offer up that old thought. And what it did was I started suddenly reading putts, like sometimes for the first time in my life, really, that I was like, oh my gosh, because your brain is going to look for what attention you give it, where you set it, you set an intention for it. It will look for evidence. Your brain wants to be right. So I set out, if I'm always going to struggle with my putting, and I would go play, I'd hit one wonky putt and I'm like, see, here we go again. Right. So if anybody listening has that thought, see, or here we go again, you have a thought error that you have an opportunity to shift. And that's where you want to start really getting curious. So that was a long explanation, but I have more to that. But that's so basically awesome. How I started it.
Hey, really quick. Imagine this. In a single calendar year, you drop your handicap by 6 strokes. You win multiple tournaments and shoot your best round ever. Oh, and you also win Player of the Year in your golf league. That's exactly what my client Luke did in 2024. In a matter of months, he dropped his handicap from an 8.1 to a 1.6. His secret, the only thing he changed about his game, he invested in mindset coaching and high performance hypnotherapy. And through our work together, he was able to conquer fear, release doubt and anxiety, calm his nerves, drastically turn up the volume of confidence, and finally start playing in attack mode. If you're listening to this show, I already know. You've got the passion, you've got the work ethic, and the commitment to play to your potential. Now it's time to master the mental game to get you there. Use the link in the show notes below to book a mindset coaching discovery call with me today, and let's make playing to your potential a habit. Yeah, well, I love so many things what you just shared, Kathy. I mean, first, like you mentioned journaling, and I get it. Most people don't resonate with journaling. There's still a woo-woo nonsense aspect. I like to say, then just emotionally vomit, whatever it is you're feeling, whether it's a voice note, handwritten out there, because you're so right. It gives you clarity to what it is that is happening on autopilot in the back of your mind on repeat. And when you can start seeing some of the words you use to speak to and about yourself, you start to have some oh shit moments like, oh, no wonder I'm feeling or behaving or performing a certain way. And to piggyback off what you shared, like there's so much power in your self-talk. And when you constantly say, I'm a terrible putter or this part of my game sucks, your subconscious is listening and it wants to make your thoughts real. So if you keep saying you suck at this, you'll never achieve that. Guess what? You may think the stars align and the world conspires against you, but really it's your subconscious thinking it's helping you achieve that goal.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that is really helpful to know too is that our brain has a negative bias to it. So it automatically wants to go and just tell you, it's trying to warn you and protect you basically. So if it thinks that you're going to have emotional or social pain, it's going to scan for that. And that's one of the things that makes golf challenging is that you can go and on the range, this is why I tell people there's two ways that you can know you can work on mental coaching, mindset coaching relative to golf. I think anybody who has a brain should have coaching personally because it's, you have one brain. You don't have a golf brain. I thought I had a golf brain and my golf brain was faulty. I have a brain. How you process things one way, you do it every way. So you on the golf course, when you're out there swinging and you're like, these are my beautiful shots. I'm like, look, see what I can do. I hit great shots. I make all the putts. And then you go to the first tee and you're like, who am I? Right? That is mental. And the reason that happens is because on the range, there is no danger for your brain. There's no saber-toothed tigers that are scaring your brain. But then you go to the first tee and there's water and there's out of bounds and there's people watching you and there's a score and there's a scoreboard that you have to put your score in front of. And what we do is we rattle, I call it our hamster cage of thoughts, right? We rattle them, we wake up all those thoughts and we freak ourselves out. And now we have all those emotions of fear or anxiety or pressure or stress. And those emotions show up in our body and they interfere with your ability to swing freely and think clearly. And so that's why you're like, wait, who am I out here? Why can't I do that? And that's where you want to know, you want to be on to what your brain's doing. And so once you witness it, it does it for everybody. Nobody's unique in this, but some people rattle their hamster cages more than other people rattle their hamster cages. And so, meaning freak themselves out by just looking at ways that they're going to have social or emotional pain. We're not worried about getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger anymore, right? But we're worried about embarrassment or disappointment or shame or the way that we're going to beat ourselves up at the end of the round. And that's why a lot of people can't take their talent out onto the golf course.
Incredibly well said. Now, I'm curious when, and maybe even on your journey or when you're working with your clients, we start identifying some of these thought errors, some of these specific thoughts that are outdated, counterproductive. Do you empower the individuals you work with, or maybe on your own journey, do you go looking for the origin of said thought to help better understand perhaps when it came to be or why or how rather even it may have served you during a period of your life?
I think, okay, so I think my answer is going to be yes and no to you. So I think it depends a little bit. This is the way, that was like an easy answer, but I talk about there's things that you can do before a golf shot. There's things that you can do after a golf shot. And then there's those thoughts that hang out with us all around. I call them like a weighted raincoat. And if you feel like you're playing with a weighted raincoat on that really you're not going to get any relief from until you get off of 18, those thoughts are a little bit more worth looking at. Those are going to be a little bit more about worrying about what your score and how you're going to feel and what it's going to, how you're going to treat yourself. It might be your fear of failure or embarrassment. Those are a little bit heavier. Standing over a shot that you're noticing that you have a little bit of doubt whether you can hit which is going to doubt gets in the way of, for sure, you swinging freely, but maybe you have some doubt that, the 7-iron is going to get over the water or something like that. I can help you individually with that shot about doubt. And I don't need to go back and really realize and understand where that's coming from. But perfectionism, people pleasing, the shaming, right? Your self-worth, and whether you're saying you're good enough or not, it's worth just knowing and understanding maybe a little bit about why you have that, because all of us have, we have ways of patterns of keeping ourselves safe when we're children. You don't have to go back and do a bunch of therapy, but my perfectionism came up and my people pleasing came up as just a way to keep dad at peace. Like when I was a kid and I had a lot of fear and I didn't know what was going, if I was perfect, dad didn't yell at me. And if I kept dad happy, I became a people pleaser, dad didn't yell at me. So my brain didn't know how to keep me safe. But so we developed these things of perfectionism, people pleasing, hypervigilance, control, like all these other ways of our brain developing to create that safety. It's worth knowing. I don't know that anybody has to go back and get that's the therapy on it, but it's worth knowing because for me, it's kind of always going to come back. And then I can be like, I see you're here, my perfectionism. I call it Penelope, right? When I did my first podcast, I tell the story. I recorded my podcast 8 or 9 times before I would send it out to the universe. And I was like, what am I doing? My perfectionism came up right here. Right. And now I call her Penelope. It just helps me create a little humor around it. And then I get to be curious about it. But where I struggled was I was wishing that Penelope never, ever showed up ever again. And so that was going to make it more challenging for me. It's just one of those things that our tendencies are going to have a way of popping up for us over and over again. We get to just witness it and not make it a big deal and know that it served you probably as a little kid somewhere.
We speak the same language. This is so cool. I'm so happy our paths have crossed. It's funny you note that on your first podcast. When I first did my first episode, this is back in 2018, I wrote the script word by word. I practiced it a few times. When I finally felt good, I nailed it. And the first review on Apple Podcasts I got was, "You sound like a scripted robot." And I was like, son of a bitch. And everyone was like, just be you, be a human. Humans aren't perfect. And I was like, okay, here we are, whatever, six years later, we're getting there. So I relate to that.
Yes.
And I love what you shared. You actually kicked off in the first 30 seconds. Then we brought it back full circle. To become the best golfer, you don't have a golf brain and an everyday human brain. You have to do the work off the course. The people pleasing, the perfectionism, they bleed into how you show up on the course. How do you help your individual clients really begin to make peace with that? And I'll give you this context. I work with a lot of golfers, and very early on, we're not talking about golf in any capacity. And I make it very clear, 90% of what we do is not going to be golf specific. It's going to get into uncovering the origins of why you have these perfectionist tendencies, why you're afraid to take risks, why you're pleasing others. How do you help your clients and audience begin to make those connections?
Between the perfectionism and on the golf course, or just noticing those patterns?
Either or, but really just the noticing, hey, you might show perfectionism on the course, but it's not just limited to the course. You're not suddenly not that person in everyday life.
Yeah. So similar to you, when, a lot of times people will come to me, or probably to you, especially if it's about golf, they'll come out and they're like, okay, I have a tournament in 3 weeks. I need some help. Or I have a tournament next week and I need some help. And I tell people the time to work on your brain is now. It was probably yesterday, right? It was probably for me, it was when I was 16. That would have been a time. My golf career would have been totally different had I known what I know now. And so, because it takes time for your brain to shift out and give up a thought. Some are simple and easy, but others take time, right? And they can come back like a water stain on the ceiling, I say, they can creep back in. So I tell people when they start working with them, I want you to practice self-awareness and working on these tools and learning how to shift thoughts off of the course. And I want you to do that because off of the golf course, let's say if you noticed a thought that wasn't serving you, or you noticed a feeling that wasn't serving you, or things that you were doing, you're like, I don't know, I get home from work and so somehow I just finish a whole bottle of wine every night. I'm like, why am I doing that? You get to get curious about that. So it's anywhere. And so off of the golf course, what I say is you have time. You can sit and spend an hour and get really curious about what's going on. On the golf course, I want you to do it on speed, right? It's basically you managing your mind fast. It's your turn to hit. Time's up. pace of play, let's go. And if you don't know how to process frustration or anxiety in 60 or 90 seconds before it's your turn to hit, you get the rug pulled out from underneath you. If you're not self-aware of yourself and all the thoughts that you have going on and your tendencies, you're going to get the rug pulled out from underneath you. And that's where it's going to take you 3 or 4 holes before you rally back, if you do rally back at all. So I encourage people to work on things off of the golf course. One of the things that I'm really cautious on is, and you're probably very good at this too, is I can sense what is happening with people before they sense what's happening. And so often I want them to notice it. Like, so I encourage them to keep doing the work until they recognize some of their tendencies, because it's so much more powerful for you to come up personally with the shifts that you need, the thoughts that you need, the self-awareness is like, oh my gosh, look what I'm doing. I just realized what I'm doing. And so in our conversations, when I coach people, I dive in and ask questions to kind of break through and get to those layers, versus saying, I think you're a perfectionist, right? Because they're like, well, I'm not a perfectionist. You think I'm a perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm like, oh, okay. I wouldn't do that. I would just say, where else does this show up for you? Where else in your life are you doing these things? And when you, as the person getting coached, can shine a light on that for you, it resonates. You're going to gain so much more traction with that. So I like to go about it that way. And sometimes, and I know you've witnessed this too, Paul, is that there's just, I'll have conversations. I feel like I'm a verbal journal for people. That's what I say. Like, okay, if you don't want to gerbil, or if you don't want to gerbil, if you don't want to journal, then you can be, I'm your verbal journal. You can just I call it brain dumping too. Just, I don't care. Just get it out of you. Right? If journaling is, kind of taboo for you. But what happens is when I pull out questions and I listen to them, I can hear things just like you can, right? So I kind of know what questions to ask and dive a little bit deeper and like, what are you making that mean? Or what's underneath that for you? Or what happens when you do that? And so that becomes a way of just providing a little bit more self-awareness for the client in that situation.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite. What's underneath that? I ask that one often. Like, what's the fear, the emotion, the feeling underneath that that thought, that action? And for those of you listening, I mean, Kathy's doing such an incredible job really highlighting that whether you see it as a thought, a belief, or a sabotaging behavior, you have these stories that are happening, produced by your subconscious mind, designed to keep you safe. And there are multiple entry points to begin dismantling, whether first it's the behavior, then it's the belief, but ultimately it's the thought taking place, because as Kathy alluded to, like that thought, given time, energy, attention, becomes a belief, and that shapes how you view the world, see other people. There are multiple entry points into beginning to dismantle and then ultimately rewrite your story. So phenomenal, Kathy. Yeah. I'm going to pivot us a little now.
Yeah.
We talked about perfection a little bit. Mm-hmm. Something I struggled with when I got back into golfing, I guess this episode comes out in 2025. So last year, is attachment to results, attachment to the scorecard. Help me. Where do I begin? Free me up, because I know it is so many of our listeners are plagued by that. They already know their score after every single hole. They start thinking about it. They realize they're on pace to shoot 3 under their lifetime low, and inevitably that fear of success kicks in and they sabotage. How can we begin to detach from the outcome, from the results, from the intra-round scorekeeping?
Okay, so one of the things that I coach on, the S in steer is a situation, a fact, a circumstance, something like that. Numbers, and wait a minute. So a situation or a fact or a circumstance, anything that works for you. Like I have a 100-yard shot into the green. I'm playing at 8:30. That's a situation. I'm playing with Billy, Betty, or Bob. That's a situation. Those are neutral. They are neither good nor bad. Okay, and numbers are neutral. So I encourage people to remember that numbers are neutral. And so it's neither good nor bad until you have a story about it, right? Just as you said about stories, until you create that story. So what are you making that number mean? And that could be individually as far as I made a double bogey on the first hole. Like, okay, so what if you made a double bogey on 10? What if you made a double bogey on 12? What if you made a double bogey on 18, right? Are you going to write the story that you're a person who doesn't finish well? If you double bogeyed 1, are you going to write the story that you don't get off to a good start? Because if you let your brain go there, that's going to start becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy for you. You're going to have this belief and identity of yourself as being someone who either doesn't get off to a good start or finish well. what our brains want to do, and one of the things that I alluded to earlier, is our brains are always scanning for different ways that we're going to get into trouble or we're going to have pain. And so I make the analogy that your brain is like a puppy on a leash or off of a leash, either way, right? And so your brain is going to scan and look for trouble. So what puppies do is they go and they look for dead frogs to roll in, right? They go and go chase squirrels. They go off into the off the sidewalk, and so they get into trouble. And so because they're on a leash, we pull them back, right? And we put them back on the sidewalk. And your brain is going to go to 18 and start adding up your score, because that's what brains do. Just like that's what puppies do, that's what brains do. And the reason it's going there is because you've made your number mean something important to your brain. So there's danger there. You're making that number mean something about you and how you're going to treat yourself and your self-worth, right? And how you're going to show up and what other people are going to think about you. And because you've put so much emphasis on a number that is neutral, your brain's like, we need to go there and see what's happening because I need to protect you. And so we don't want to be shocked or surprised that our brain goes to 18 and starts adding up our score, or goes to the end of 9, starts adding up our score. We're like, oh, I see you, brain. You're doing what puppies do. You're doing what brains do. Back over here, and we're going to pay attention to the score at hand. It is going to be a much more challenging task if the score, you're going to make that number mean a lot about you, right? I do this little quiz it's not quiz. I do this exercise with people that give me your bad number. Okay, I'll do it with you. So what would be a good score?
In the 80s. 87 is my lifetime low.
Okay, 87. So let's say if you shot 87, that would be a good score. What would be a really bad score?
Anything over 100.
Okay. And then anything in between, you'd be like, meh.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So when you shoot 87, how do you get to feel?
Oh, elated, accomplished, proud.
Okay, great. When you shoot over 100, how do you get to feel?
I choose to feel defeated, like I came up well short of my potential, disappointed.
Right. So if your golf game, if your score is based on how you get to feel, it's going to be super challenging for you to take your talent on the golf course. Your golf is too hard to carry the weight of how you get to treat yourself at the end of 18. Right. And so the more that you are going to feel crappy, like if I'm going to feel, or that you get to feel really good about yourself too. Like the only time I get to talk nicely about myself is if I shoot 87, you're going to put all this pressure on your golf game. Come on, golf game. Like we need to show up, because how I get to feel is dependent on that. And I tell people everything that we do and don't do is based on how we get to feel. Yeah. In a nutshell. And so if then you're going to put pressure on your golf swing to like not make mistakes coming in. Don't make a mistake. Like you got to hit it close. You got to make sure you make this putt. Right. And because if you don't, then you could possibly feel this horrible feeling of disappointment and shame and embarrassment. Yeah. Right. So when the more that emotions are on the line on how you get to treat yourself at the end of the round, the more you're going to focus on results.
Incredibly well said. For everybody listening, go back and re-listen to those last 5 minutes. Awesome. And I'll add too, and I think you'll agree, like if you're starting to dread those negative emotions, you start doing things to avoid, which you and I both know that fear-based avoidance behavior leads to more tension, more tightness in the body, more mistakes, more poor shots. It brings you there even closer, and now you feel that much worse.
Yeah, 100%. So I tell people, when going back again, full circle to being simple, I say that golf, for you to play to your potential, is 2 steps, right? It's the first step is to figure out your best or preferred state. And that's not like Arizona or Texas or Florida to play golf from. That is like how you feel. Right? And so for 99% of the people, 99.9% of the people, it's either going to be, I want to be calm, or a synonym of these. I want to be certain, or I want to be confident. Okay. Yeah. So I call it the 3 C's. So the reason that those are useful, like you just go back as a listener, just go back and just think about your best round. How were you feeling? What state were you in for most of that round? And so then and the reason they're useful is because those are emotions. And when they're in our body, we can swing freely, meaning we can take all of our talent out there because emotions show up in our body, and we can think clearly, right? So we're in the front part of our brain. And so any other emotion is, for the most part, getting in your way. of your talent. So the goal is then, the second step is to hit as many shots from there as possible. And like I said, it's simple, right? It's not easy, but it's simple. So your self-awareness comes into like, am I calm, certain, or confident over this shot? And if not, why not? Right? What do I need to do to pivot back to there? And that's where you get a lot of self-discovery in what's getting in your way.
Yeah, and that goes back to the principle again, curiosity there. Get curious. Why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? And do so through a lens of non-judgmental curiosity. It just is. Like you said it so well. Like these things are inherently neutral. Like the numbers example was so powerful. Same thing here. Like these thoughts, these beliefs, just allow them to be and get curious why they are there, and allow that to keep you in that rational, calm, certain state to then begin problem solving, unlearning, or upgrading the thoughts.
Yeah, I remind people, you are not your thoughts. Like you have 70,000 thoughts, or whoever counted them, right? Like a day, right? So they, just a huge number, 60 to 80, whoever counted them. So you have that many thoughts in a day. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. So you get to pick which ones you want to think. So you can witness like a crazy ass thought and go like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that, right? You might stand over a ball and go, oh my gosh, I just thought about shanking it. Okay, you either get to glom onto it and pull it off like it's a carousel, like baggage going around a carousel, and you pulled it off and took it home, or you let it pass on by and you pick the next best thought. Right. And so that's where people that was one of the things that was an epiphany for me, is that when I was playing for a living, I had so many crappy thoughts. And the reason I had so many crappy thoughts all the time was because I was so scared about how I was going to feel at the end of the round. I was so scared about how that number was going to make me feel. And so my brain was freaking out all the time, and I wished they'd all go away. And it really I wasn't broken because I had them. I was just thinking all of them. I was like, yeah, I believed everyone that came up my way. Right. So, and I made them a problem. So you want to make it, as you going back to your point, non-judgmental, right? Just don't judge your thoughts. Just be really curious about them.
Hey, fellow golfer. I want to take 30 seconds and just remind you how much I appreciate you continuously listening to this show. I sincerely appreciate you listening. I sincerely appreciate you sharing the episodes that resonate most with you, with your fellow golfers, friends, and peers. This goes a long way in helping me to best help you. It gives me the leverage, the opportunity to attract the bigger guests, experts, and players to continuously provide you with a masterclass on in-depth mental and emotional training you need to play to your potential. One other step you can take that goes a long way in helping me best help you is hitting pause right now and leaving a genuine rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this show. Hit pause, leave that rating, leave a review, and I'll catch you back in the episode. So in your playing career, or in those that you coach, how have you seen people pleasing as a tendency begin to permeate the game of golf, show up in that individual's golf game? How is it hurting them? What can they begin to do to let go of these people pleasing tendencies to play better?
Okay. So, people pleasing, as you know, is that where you're trying to make other people feel better, right? So that you get to feel better, in a nutshell, right? So you're concerned about hurting someone else's feelings. And so that can, on a golf course, I coach, I find it a little more often in women than men, though we could go in through the stats. It's just been my experience. But the tour players that I coach, maybe they're a little bit more concerned about being extra polite when they at their own expense. So this is where it gets in your way. If you're doing things at your own expense to just make someone else more comfortable, like let's say you even went in and raked their bunker when you should be up there reading your green, right? I mean, that might be an extreme thing. Or just not saying words. For instance, someone's standing in your line, or they're in your peripheral view, and you don't want to say something to them because you're worried that you're going to hurt their feelings. But you're standing over the ball and you're distracted because all you're thinking about is, I can't believe they're standing there, and I can't focus on my putt because why aren't they moving, right? And now you're getting a little bit of resentment. That's a good sign that you're doing some people pleasing. Then it's going to get in the way of your performance. So it's something for you really to be aware of. Professional golfers, tournament golfers, it doesn't come up as much as your day-to-day golfer who's playing a lot of social golf. but it for sure does come up. And you just want to look at those ways that you get concerned what other people are feeling or thinking about you. And one of the things that I tell people is you have no control over that. Right? You can't control other people's thoughts or emotions, no matter what you do. And so it's about setting boundaries for yourself and just recognizing and noticing where you're not standing up for yourself. I tell people relative to people pleasing, it's the things that are inside the etiquette of golf. For sure, you have every right to stand up and say, like, do you mind moving? Right.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Like, I think that's one of the biggest ones. Or you're making noise while I'm hitting. Do you mind saying that? And a lot of people who are people pleasers are afraid to say those things.
I love it. Incredibly clear examples. I've found too in my experience that if there's like a regular group of, a foursome or a group of 8 friends, buddies, pals playing together, there's always that one individual who wears the host hat more than others, who wants to make sure everyone else is having a good time. And I have found in some of the individuals I coach, they use that as an excuse to justify why they don't set their intention and go through their full pre-shot routine. They got to make sure so-and-so is having a great time, enjoying this course, is having a good outing. And if I'm speaking to you, know that it's okay to be selfish at those times when you're preparing so that you can play best, because when you're playing well, everybody's having a much better time.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing that I do instill in people is that you are the thinker of your thoughts and they're the thinker of their thoughts. And we can often go through and think that we're responsible for other people's thoughts and emotions. And if you're a people pleaser on the golf course, you're a people pleaser off the golf course. It doesn't just show up there. So I would ask you where you take responsibility off of the course for other people's thoughts and emotions. And what are you doing so at your own expense to try and manipulate them? Because actually people pleasing is manipulative. So what you're doing is you're changing your behavior. You're changing maybe what you say, at your own expense, because you're trying to manipulate other people's thoughts and emotions. You think you are, because if they think a certain way or they feel a certain way, then I get to feel a certain way. Right. And that's where we manipulate people. When I say it's manipulative, they get offended. Like, no, it's coming from my heart. And I'm kind. There's a difference. You can be kind and have a kind act. And that would be you not caring what they thought. It didn't matter what they thought. But if you're doing a kind act because you want them to think differently or feel differently, then you're manipulating them.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good nuance there. I don't think most people recognize that at its core, that's exactly what people pleasing is. So I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people don't like hearing that.
I know, right? It's humble. There's the word I'm looking for. It can be a lot of humility hearing that, to hear that is really what's going on.
Yeah.
So I've noticed over the last few months, and eternally grateful, the number of women listening to this show is continuing to grow. Exciting. You having such an in-depth pulse of the female golfing community, both from a playing and coaching. And I'm coming from the lens. I had the privilege of taking a woman out who I just befriended on the range. She had never stepped foot on the range. On the course, absolutely terrified, fearful, anxious. Will I be judged? Will I be embarrassed? For the woman out there listening who's starting to get into the game, they're playing consistently, but there's something holding them back from truly expressing their authentic selves on the course. What words do you have to share with her?
You belong. You belong on the golf course. You belong in the game of golf. The golf community, welcomes you. But what happens is that as women have a tendency to feel like they need to be more, let's say, just perfect, more advanced. They need to be better before they'll be able to feel comfortable. Right. So guys will go out there and play and they're like, I've never played before. Let's go. A woman's like, what do I need to know? Like, I want to make sure that I fit in. I want to make sure that I know everything. They're not willing necessarily to take themselves out onto the golf course until they're ready. When I was teaching for a living, I can't tell you how many beginner clinics I did where I was like, I always call all my sample women Betty. So I was like, just so I don't, I don't run into too many. So I just usually it's a safe name. So I'm like, Betty, why are you here again? You are not a beginner. This is your 3rd or 4th year doing the beginner clinic. Just assume I'm a beginner, right? Because they're just like, I'm not ready. So a lot of women don't feel like they're ready to go out into the golf course. They fear judgment from other people and that comparison that other people are better than them. And I just encourage them that just get out there and get your feet wet. You're ready and you belong on the golf course. And everybody has gone through the same exact steps that you have gone through of beginning the game of golf. And people who have done that have compassion for what you're going through and understanding, because we've all started there.
Yeah. I love that. That's so powerful. You belong.
Yes.
Wrapping things up, you have such a neat playing career. What moment are you most proud of, or what moment stands out about your playing career that you'll always remember?
I won 3 back-to-back mini tour events, not really amazing events, because I needed to pay bills. And I know that doesn't sound really glamorous, but because you don't make a lot of money as a woman in the tour, you just definitely don't make enough money or much money as a mini tour. But I had some serious bills to pay, and I just really put my nose down, and I ended up winning 3 back-to-back tournaments and paid off some bills so that I could keep playing. And I was most proud of that because, it was just, I proved to myself that when I really put my mind to something, I can do it.
Awesome. I really love that. That's so neat. Talk about being able to handle pressure. No problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
you're a professional golfer. You're a golf coach. You're a mindset, all things mental coach. You're also a podcast host. You're also an author. You wear so many hats. You wear them so well. Let our listeners know where they can go to learn more about your work, connect with you on the podcast, the social media, and of course, go purchase your book.
Yeah. Okay. So my podcast is called Think Above Par, to play below par. So you'll find it at Think Above Par. They're short. They're about 12 minutes. It's just me talking about a topic. So you'll find something in there to resonate with you. So you can scroll through and find some things. If you really want to dive into the work, I'd probably tell you to start a little bit more towards the beginning. And if you're interested in taking things to a deeper level, I'd love to connect with you and get on a call just like Paul does. I have some programs, some coaching programs. I have a membership, or I have individual coaching, and you can find all that information at my website, which is kathyhartwood.com. And I also have, a book that's on Amazon. It's called Mastering Your Golf Game, a guide to self-coaching, where I teach people how to self-coach. It's definitely the foundation of it. And I just released a workbook to go alongside with it. And then the other thing that you'll be able to find on Amazon is a mental golf journal that I just started with some of the steps of how to use steer in there, and a brain dump. I have pages on a brain dump in there. And I walk you through some of the steps on how to go through that. And it's designed for you to start shifting some of those beliefs and thoughts, just like I discovered them, and you can discover them about yourself so that you can create some different results for yourself on the golf course.
Incredible. And all of that will be linked conveniently below in the show notes of this episode. Kathy, thank you so much for joining me today. This was phenomenal and so insightful. I learned a tremendous amount, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. This was really a great conversation. Thank you.
You bet. And for all of you listening out there, thank you for tuning in to another episode. I know you found immense value in everything that Kathy had to share. So please do her a favor, share this episode and get it out there with all of your fellow golfing buddies. And if you haven't done so already, taking 30 seconds to leave a genuine rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the show is deeply appreciated. Have a fantastic week. Hit them straight, and we'll catch you in the next episode.